Welcome back to you, Miss Family, as we continue our discussion this morning on the role of the law with our cultural heritage with attorney, notary public and managing director of Simelane Attorneys, Phumelelo Simelane. So earlier on we touched on things like our traditions and our customs, and one very important element is marriages, right?
Yes,
and customary marriages.
Yes.
How are customary marriages actually recognized within our law?
So again, I think that's a very important question because again, there's a piece of legislation that specifically tries to recognize and regulate customary marriages, which is the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, which basically says we don't have to essentially enter into a white wedding to get married. So we can get married in our various customary ways and in that way also preserve our heritage. So yeah, I think that's a very good question to ask, and that's how I think we also promote and develop our customs in that sense, to keep it, allowing people to get married in the various cultural ways.
And the respect of our cultures as well going forward.
Exactly.
If we turn our attention now to our language rights, what would you say constitutes language discrimination and what recourse is available for people who are experiencing it?
So language has become a very topical issue in our country.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'll start off from a good point of view that we now have 12 official languages.
Yes, with the addition of sign language,
with the addition of sign language, which I think is a very progressive move by our country, being the very few countries that have done it. But I think again, we need to try and balance language rights, right? We need to sort of try and look at demographics and look at areas of look at demographics and also look at the medium of instruction of language. So again, that brings us to now the Bella Bill, which is now being very contentious, which essentially aims to give schools and governing bodies the power to allow their own admission and determine their own language policies, but within the area. So it's a very practical thing because you can't have Zulu medium instruction, primary in the Northern Cape, for example. So it's trying to balance out that, and that's why I think the language issue is very contentious. And it's still going to be contentious until it's been properly resolved.
I think it's such a tricky one to balance. I mean, specifically with the Bella Bill, you've seen concerns about the language policies coming in with the bill, particularly with Afrikaans-speaking groups who have fears that certain sections of the Bella Bill threaten to erode mother tongue instruction within schools.
Yeah, and certainly not. Look, I don't think the Bella Bill objective is to erode Afrikaans or to essentially erode the Afrikaans language or culture, not at all. I mean, remember, the Afrikaans language is spoken predominantly by a greater number of our people. So, example, if you go to the Northern Cape and you go to provinces which are primarily Afrikaans, you can't use any other medium of instruction. That would be maybe the primary objective. But to try and balance things out, we need to start introducing English as the double medium, which is, there's been a pushback against that. But we need to start introducing other languages to allow more access to education for our learners. So I think there's still going to be a lot of back and forth for the Bella Bill, but I think its purpose and its spirit is in the good place. It's in a good place.
That's such an important point that you're making. I mean, it takes me back to my days at Stellenbosch University, where there was Afrikaans as the medium of instruction, and those of us who wanted to learn in English then had headsets with a translator translating it into English. So it was so tricky. But I think the point of access is definitely a good starting point for us.
That is tricky. That was tricky.
It was very tricky.
That sounds very tricky. Look, I mean, we want to get to a place where we have access, right? Every learner in South Africa has the ability and access to join an institution, learn in a language which they predominantly comfortable with, which at this point is English, right? And then again, we're starting to see the introduction of indigenous languages being introduced in schools as electives, as Zulu.
Which is so important as well.
Exactly, where you see groups who never had the opportunity or never exposed to Zulu, Venda, are now being, have the opportunity to take up these languages. And for me, I would say, as on a Heritage Day, I'd promote I would promote it. Take up a language. Try and learn about a different culture, but don't get stuck in a bubble of your own heritage.
Yes.
Let's try and really, really promote it and learn about other cultures, learn about other customs, and see how people do things differently. We might learn something.
Absolutely, that's a brilliant perspective to have. Phumelelo, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your insights with us. And of course, he has also shown us that heritage is not just a celebration, TMS family, but it's a fundamental human right. So as we celebrate our diverse heritage, let's remember that our laws play a vital role in protecting and promoting our cultural identity to ensure equality and justice for all. Stay tuned, we'll be back with your 7 o'clock news bulletin after the break.